From Wish TV and the All Indiana Podcast Network, this is the News 8 Daily 8 Podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update.
Hi, this is Kylie Conway, and this is your News 8 Daily 8 for Tuesday, July 26th. Rain and storms are set to be ongoing for the mainly southern half of the states to start our Tuesday. On and off active weather going to stick around along and south of I-70 until the nighttime hours. Will stay pretty mild in the 80s for our highs. And today, more testimony and possible changes to legislation as state lawmakers consider banning nearly all abortions in Indiana. The special legislative session kicked off yesterday with thousands of protesters downtown and a visit from Vice President Kamala Harris. Hundreds of people signed up to give 3-minute statements on the Republican abortion proposal. It bans abortions from the time an egg is implanted in a woman's uterus with limited exceptions in cases of rape, incest, if the fetus is a fatal anomaly, and to protect the life of the mother. The bill's author says she expects a lot of changes before a final draft is voted on potentially this week.
I think this is a framework. This bill is a framework. I think it's going to be subject to amendment in several issues. One of the criticisms of the bill has been the lack of criminal penalties. And so I think you're going to see amendments in regard to that.
Public testimony is set to resume at 9 o'clock this morning. You can also email your testimony to the Senate. And confrontations erupted outside the Statehouse throughout the afternoon, though people on both sides don't like the Republican proposal. Numerous anti-abortion activists argue the bill is weak and should not include exceptions.
I mean, all children are equal. They're all created in the image of God, so I think it's unfair to condemn some to death and some to life. And as of rape, I mean, you can't kill a child for the sins of a father. That's not right, in my opinion. You can't do that.
Hundreds of business owners also said they oppose any type of ban on abortion.
Women are a really big and important part of our economy. Having the ability to access education and employment is really important. And access to abortion helps make sure that that can happen.
We're advocating. We're talking to our elected officials. We're flooding their offices with phone calls, emails.
Planned Parenthood is asking those who didn't have a chance to testify against the bill to sign up to do so today. And today, more protesters will head to the Statehouse. Indiana Right to Life is hosting a Love Them Both rally to urge state lawmakers to ban abortion. State Senator Liz Brown and other anti-abortion rights activists are set to speak. Starts at 11 at the North Atrium.
Maybe some people need to actually learn how a woman's body works.
Vice President Kamala Harris is denouncing the effort to ban abortion. IT-Mate was there as she told state lawmakers that Indiana's plans reflect a national health care crisis. Harris flew into Indianapolis yesterday for a roundtable discussion with Democrats. She said Indiana women deserve the right to make their own choices for their own bodies.
The parameters that are being proposed mean that for the vast majority of women, by the time she realizes she is pregnant, she will effectively be prohibited from having access to reproductive health care that would allow her to choose.
Harris also said an abortion ban would have the most impact on women of color. She also says it's a step closer to losing the right to contraception and same-sex marriage. An Indianapolis doctor at the center of the nationwide abortion debate says she feels anguished, desperate, and angry. Dr. Caitlin Bernard performed an abortion on a 10-year-old rape victim from Ohio in a case that has gotten attention across the country. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, she talks about the experience and the lawmakers who are looking to ban abortion. She writes in part, "Lawmakers will never face my patients. They will never stand in their shoes or hold their hands. They will never know their pain. Legislators are the last people who should be in the business of deciding who gets medical care and who does not." Bernard also says she's been threatened and called a liar since she publicly shared the story earlier this month. Indiana's Attorney General Todd Rokita announced that he is investigating Bernard. In turn, she has taken the first steps to sue Rokita for defamation. The man accused of raping the 10-year-old in Ohio is pleading not guilty. Police say Gerson Fuentes confessed to the crime while in prison. Police say Fuentes confessed to rape not once, but twice since being in custody. His lawyer says there is still much to be discovered, though. He wants to see evidence, police reports, and body camera footage, and says there are rules about when prosecution can use police statements. Fuentes is charged with 2 felony counts of rape in Ohio. He's being held without bond ahead of an unscheduled hearing. He was arrested July 12th. Since then, officers say he admitted to raping the 10-year-old girl on 2 separate occasions. Prior to Fuentes' arrest, Ohio's attorney general and a congressman from the state, both Republicans, were among conservatives who publicly questioned if the rape victim was even real. Fuentes' attorney says he knows this has an impact on society with the timing of overturning Roe v. Wade.
I certainly do think it is a shame that this situation has turned into a political football that's being kicked around by a lot of people for their own benefit, rather than sort of focusing on the facts of what may or may not have happened.
And with the national attention this case has gained, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita is investigating Dr. Bernard for potential criminal and professional violations in the case of the rape victim. The timeline is, according to the indictment, the rape allegedly took place between January and May. Authorities became aware of the girl's pregnancy in late June and began an investigation. On June 30th, the girl had a medical abortion in Indianapolis by Dr. Bernard. As for Fuentes, he's still waiting for a hearing to be scheduled. If he's convicted, he could face life without parole. And state lawmakers are also working to come to an agreement on inflation relief for Indiana taxpayers. The House filed its version of an inflation relief bill yesterday. If passed, the proposal would send every taxpayer a rebate check for $225, like Governor Holcomb proposed. Anyone who did not file tax returns can file an affidavit with the Department of Revenue to get their check. The proposal also includes several tax cuts for parents, like a sales tax exemption for diapers and an increased tax deduction for dependent children. Senate Republicans balked at the governor's plan, instead proposing to cap the state gas tax and suspend the utility tax. The top two leaders are out at the Carmel Police Department. The police chief has now resigned, days after he suspended his deputy chief over sexual misconduct allegations. Jeff Horner had only been chief since January. Mayor Jim Brainerd accepted Horner's resignation from the top job yesterday. He will stay on as a lieutenant. Brainerd says the former chief of police, Jim Barlow, will take over until a permanent replacement is chosen.
But I would like to see them continue that journey of transparency and integrity and communication, because I think we can work through almost anything if we communicate with each other and if we're good to each other.
There's no timeline yet for hiring a replacement. A Southern Indiana judge is resigning after being charged with domestic battery. Sabrina Bell was on the circuit court in Crawford County. The Indiana Supreme Court suspended her in May for hitting her ex-husband in front of their children. Bell has agreed to give up her law license for 150 days, and she says she'll not take any judicial office position in Indiana state courts. This is not the first time Bell has been in the headlines. In 2019, investigators say she was with two other judges in Indianapolis and made an obscene gesture that led to an argument and gunfire in a downtown Indianapolis White Castle parking lot. A former Indiana congressman is facing charges for insider trading. In 2010, Steve Booyer announced he would not be seeking another term in Congress. He then went on to establish his own consulting and lobbying firm the following year. The Securities and Exchange Commission says Booyer learned about T-Mobile's plan to acquire Sprint in 2018, started buying Sprint stock the next day, and then sold it after the acquisition. The commission says he did something similar again in 2019, pocketing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the deals. Now the commission is looking to be paid back. U.S. attorneys have also filed criminal charges. And today, the Consumer Confidence Index for July is expected to be released. Today's release comes after the index fell nearly 5 points to 98.7 last month compared to May. It showed people are losing confidence while gas and food prices continue to rise. Last month's rate was the lowest it's reached since February 2021. The index also fell for the second consecutive time in June. The Conference Board said last month people are still purchasing appliances, cars, and homes. And also today, former President Donald Trump returns to Washington, D.C. for the first time since he left office. Trump plans to speak at the America First Agenda Summit. Organizers of the summit have been crafting a strategy and agenda for a possible second Trump presidency. Advisors describe it as a policy speech and have been urging Trump to look forward rather than focus on the results of the 2020 election. And the January 6th committee released a marked-up draft of a post-riot speech showing major differences between the original version and what Trump delivered. Representative Elaine Luria tweeted out a short video yesterday showing the speech and edits to it. The original version said that Trump would order the Justice Department to prosecute lawbreakers to the fullest extent of the law. It also said that those who broke the law do not represent Trump and belong in jail. The video also includes parts of committee interviews with advisors Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, and John McEntee.
Do you recognize the handwriting?
It looks like my father's handwriting.
It looks like here that he crossed out that he was directing the Department of Justice to ensure all lawbreakers are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We must send a clear message, not with mercy, but with justice. Legal consequences must be swift and firm. Do you know why he wanted that crossed out?
I don't know.
Was the implication that the president was in some ways reluctant to give that speech?
Yeah.
The committee says it is still investigating the insurrection and will hold more hearings in the fall. A former top aide to Mike Pence has testified in a different investigation into the insurrection. Mark Short was chief of staff to then Vice President Pence. Short confirms that he spoke to a federal grand jury but is not sharing any specifics about the testimony. In an interview Monday, CNN asked him about Trump's post-riot speech.
I think that on that day, certainly there were probably some people who foolishly got caught up in the events that were happening on the 6th. But I think it's unfair to describe the rioters as patriots or merely expressing their First Amendment rights. I think that if you heard Vice President Pence's remarks when the Senate reconvened that night, he very clearly called that all involved should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Short has also cooperated with the House Committee's investigation of the Capitol riots. Two-time IndyCar champ Joseph Newgarden is out of the hospital awaiting evaluation before returning to racing. As I mentioned yesterday on the Daily 8, Newgarden collapsed after a crash at Iowa Speedway on Sunday. Team Penske says he's now at home in Tennessee. He's set to be evaluated in Indianapolis on Thursday. A second evaluation may be necessary if IndyCar determines his crash registered more than 80 G-forces. Team Penske named Santino Ferrucci as its standby driver in case Newgarden is not medically cleared to compete on the IMS road course Saturday. To business headlines, the share of Americans who report having difficulties paying their bills has surpassed its 2020 pandemic peak in a U.S. Census Bureau survey. 4 in 10 adults said it's been somewhat or very difficult to cover usual household expenses. Walmart says rising food prices are starting to affect people's spending habits. The company warned that customers are not buying as much clothing and other merchandise because of high food and fuel costs. Walmart says it expects consumers to be cautious on spending for the rest of the year. And if you've shopped online recently, you may have had this experience. You find an item, add it to your cart, and then when you get around to paying, the price has gone up. You can thank pricing algorithms. These are computer programs that look at factors like supply, demand, and the prices competitors are charging, and then adjust the price in real time. Now, NPR reports there are calls for greater regulation of these algorithms. And finally, 3D printing firm Trias has partnered with Eli Lilly to develop 3D printed oral gastrointestinal drugs. Trias is a Chinese company that deals primarily with 3D printed pharmaceuticals. One advantage to this is the 3D printing allows for a different mix of active ingredients and allows for drug release control that can help with side effects. This has been your News 8 Daily 8 for Wish TV. I'm Kylie Conway. Online at wishtv.com and follow us on Facebook when you search Wish TV.
This is the News 8 Daily 8 podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update on demand for even more on demand and on the go. Connect with Wish TV on Facebook at wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile app. Thank you for listening. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow this podcast for updates every weekday morning on the All Indiana Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcast.